Hi everyone, welcome to After Dark Analysis. Today I'm going to have a special guest on, Ryan Tutolo.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
And he is from the All You Need Is Blood podcast that I have jumped over to at least once, and I've had other members, or going to have other members on. Today we're going to talk about the influence of trashy horror movies.
Oh my god, my favorite. I love trash.
We are going to start at four-walling. For those that don't know what that is, it's basically small production companies, kind of towards the beginning of film, definitely with the beginning of sound, would kind of go around, rent out a theater, and show their movie. And the big gimmick was always that they were going to show you something really shocking, and that's what they'd advertise. But 9 times out of 10, you'd never actually saw it. And they're like, oh, you'll see it next week, and then they'd be out of town, so of course you're not going to see it next week. And we still kind of see this a little today in the modern monster movie of you'll see it. Like sometimes you never do, sometimes you do a little bit. Sometimes there's too much goddamn monster in the entire thing. You can definitely see that you'll see it next time influence in trailer editing for monster movies. So we move on to Russ Meyer, who is still the king of the sex film. One of the weirder things about him is he was actually friends with Roger Ebert, and that really pushed his films kind of more to the forefront instead of a lot of schlock directors that kind of they would make films, they would make money, but nobody ever really knew them or their influence. And Russ Meyer, even still today, still seems to be what people envision as a schlock film. Like, when people think, big-boobed blonde heroine overcoming the whatever kind of evil, normally a male trying to kill her, that's Russ Meyer. That is the formula he set for.
With, of course, a nice sprinkling of trash thrown all over the top, I think.
Oh, yeah, exactly, because that's where you have to be, and to get people's attention. I mean, John Waters constantly praises Meyer. He says Faster Pussycat Kill Kill is probably one of the best movies ever made. The band Mudhoney is named after him. There's a lot of comparison between Beyond the Valley of the Dolls and the newer film Neon Demon. So this was a big 60s director who really did kind of mold what we view the horror heroine as, even though many would contend that he's more in the grindhouse genre. But to be fair, you go into any video store in America that doesn't have a grindhouse section, it's pretty much all going to be in horror.
Yeah, and they're like sisters grown up together almost, the horror genre and exploitation, grindhouse, whatever you want to call it. They all sort of mesh together, and I don't know, they play nice. I think they bring the same types of crowds is what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going in tandem with Meyer, we also have Herschell Gordon-Lewis. He is called the godfather of gore because he essentially invented the gore film, splatter film, whatever you want to call it, with Blood Feast and 2000 Maniacs. Other people have been quoted saying about him, just to kind of show his influence, Herschell Gordon-Lewis is a man who put red meat in the American cinematic diet. Ultimately, Herschell made Quentin Tarantino possible, and that's from Joe Bob Briggs. Many horror fans probably know him from Monster Vision. And he invented a genre of movies and made fun of himself from the very beginning, which I thought was endearing. And this is again from John Waters, who even ended up going and making a cameo appearance in the 2002 film Blood Feast 2 All You Can Eat, just to pay homage to his own multiple maniacs.
I was going to mention that because I love that scene when John Waters comes in Blood Feast 2. I believe he plays the priest at a wedding. It is so funny. You see John, like, I wasn't expecting it at all, watching that movie the first time I saw it. And then as you're, the movie's complete, like, gore-fest nonsense, hilariousness, which is pretty typical of a H.G. Lewis film. And then all of a sudden, John Waters shows up as a priest, and I'm like, okay, that's perfect. That is amazing. That's like the definitive, what I think of like the kind of comedy that John Waters and Herschell Gordon-Lewis would both, love. It's that scene really fit well with the two of them, I think. And I'm a big Herschell Gordon-Lewis fan. He did actually have some of those same type of I don't know if you want to call them sleazy, but the more sexualized sort of films that we had mentioned earlier. And earlier in his career. And then he transitioned a little bit more into the splatterfest, like you had mentioned, Blood Feast being obviously that kicking off point that really sort of set the trend for like the kind of movies that have blood, guts, and gore. And there really wouldn't nowadays be any like ultra-violent movies or anything like that. They all owe it to Herschell Gordon Lewis. He is most definitely the grandfather of the sort of guts and gore and, you know, massive killings and lots of blood all over the screen and everywhere else. Great director of the exploitative, and he loves to have fun with his films, which is something a lot of directors don't like to poke fun at themselves. But yeah, Herschell Gordon Lewis is definitely somebody that he doesn't mind getting a good laugh at his own expense.
Yeah, Herschell definitely started the gore up, but he also put in that very deep, black, gallows humor, and that kind of aided in the cognitive dissonance of, hey, people, this isn't real. Plus, that ultra bright red, almost giallo-style blood.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in something like Color Me Blood Red.
Oh, yeah.
With the painter making his paintings out of the blood. And I'm not sure, I don't know for certain, but I'm convinced it was literally just paint that the blood substance was.
If anybody watching hasn't seen any of Herschell's work, he does use, it looks almost like tempera paint that you would get in like elementary school to finger paint with, as kind of this blood substance. It doesn't look realistic at all, but pairing it with these really gory graphic effects that most people hadn't seen before, it was really shocking for the time period, and a lot of these still hold up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of his. I like his movies because I like to have fun when I watch my horror movies, and there's no way you can watch a Herschell Gordon Lewis movie without having fun. Exactly.
Yeah, because we also see his influence later, because I know he was listed as a producer on Chainsaw Sally. I'm not sure if that was in actuality, that he was there on set producing, or it was some kind of spiritual production of these characters are loosely based off something he did. So we've kind of got that campy, fun show and movie feeding directly off the influence of him.
Even if you think of something along the lines of like a Peter Jackson type movie, if you have something like Bad Taste or Brain Dead, and it's absolute splatter, but it's still hilarious, and there's a lot of humor built into the movie, and I think that is the kind of influence that Herschell Gordon Lewis has on horror cinema as you go forward.
And speaking of Peter Jackson, he is absolutely influenced by this as well. As Ryan was saying, we have Bad Taste and Brain Dead. Meet the Feebles was a little bit more comedic than horror, but most people wouldn't think, looking at somebody who did Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogy, going, oh, he started in splatter.
You can still pick up the sense of it in something along the lines of one of his films right before Lord of the Rings, the Michael J. Fox ghost thriller, Frighteners. You could still find that humor, and it's much lighter on the gore. There's not a lot of gore. They sort of put all of these splatter effects into more than like the CGI stuff that goes onto it. But like the one scene that pops into my head that is something I could see is him being like, no, that we're having fun here, is when Jeffrey Combs pops up into camera and has his head blown off with a shotgun. But like as his head blows away, his ghost image is immediately there. So like it doesn't look that gory, despite being this like horrible event. But it's just a little comedic thing that sort of happens in the movie, and that same type of like, we can have gore, we can have all murder and mayhem, but we can still have fun with it, is that kind of influence that Herschell Gordon Lewis put into horror cinema going forward.
Absolutely, and Peter Jackson was even quoted as saying, I call them splat stick. To me, they were jokes. We enjoyed being crazy and anarchic and upsetting people we wanted to upset in those days, but big puppets having sex, it's harmless, surely. And that is his mantra in his early days. We absolutely see that. I even put, you were talking about the Frighteners and how gory some bits are, but I put that on my horror for people that don't like horror, because it seems like between the jokes and the terrible CG, because it wasn't even that good for like 90s, early 2000s CG. So my guess is it was intentionally bad. Just again, create that dissonance of, this isn't real, these people aren't really dying, because it looks so hokey.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of my favorite movies, sort of like I mean, I guess I was a teenager at the time, but I guess I'd still consider that growing up. But I loved that movie when it came out. I rented it. I must have rented it from that video store like 100 times. I don't even know. I loved the Frighteners. I thought that was the fucking best movie at the time. I'm like, it's funny, it's horror, it's everything.
No, I absolutely agree, and I've heard that out of a lot of horror fans, that they just goddamn love the Frighteners. This concludes part 1 of our discussion on the influence of trashy and B-grade horror films. Join us next time, and we will be talking about both Roger Corman and The Asylum. As always, if you like what you're seeing, please hit like, comment, subscribe. If you don't like what you're seeing, leave me a comment and let me know. Thank you.